Before we start, I'd like to thank all of you who back us on Patreon. These people are really helping TLDR grow and enabling us to take greater risks and try new things. In the coming months, you're going to see some big changes in TLDR, and it's thanks to these people that that's possible. If you want to lend us a hand and get some cool perks, like the ability to vote on video topics, exclusive merchandise, discounts on our store, early access to some of our videos, and exclusive behind the scenes content, then sign up for as little as $1 a month. You can do that at patreon.com/TLDR news. Coined in the mid-1990s, the CANZUK agreement is a theoretical proposal that's been suggested to bring together some of the Commonwealth nations. As the acronym suggests, the countries included are Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and the United Kingdom. But this is a Brexit Explained video, and you might be wondering how this ties to Brexit. Well, if the UK isn't going to be in an alliance with the EU, it needs the power to create new trade deals, something which it currently doesn't have. At the moment, all of the UK's trade deals come via the EU, and as such, CANZUK isn't exactly possible. Maybe some kind of CANZEU, but it's not got quite the same ring to it. As the UK is currently in the process of leaving the EU, they might soon have the ability to forge their own trade deals, though with the progress being made, even that's slightly up in the air. Making trade deals will be vital for the UK's success post-Brexit, because once the UK has left, it loses all of its trade deals it gets via the EU. So the UK will be pretty desperate to get new trade deals set up to facilitate trade. This CANZUK model is just one proposal that could help the UK post-Brexit, and aims to bring together these countries in an economic and political union. Supporters of the proposal argue that the four countries are not only all members of the Commonwealth, but also share a similar linguistic, political, and common law legal tradition. In fact, Canada, New Zealand, and Australia all have the Queen of the United Kingdom as their head of state. That's a whole weird thing in itself, and if you want a video explaining the Commonwealth and how the Queen manages to be head of state of so many countries, then like this video and comment below what you'd like to learn. Anyway, beyond the regal links, this deal is seen as attractive to some, as it would allow Brits to move to CANZUK nations and enjoy the same working rights they currently enjoy with EU nations as a member of the EU. This would also allow citizens from Canada, Australia and New Zealand to live and work in Britain, who currently have less working rights than EU member states. If the agreement is realised, it would cover 132 million people, living on a total land area of 18.1 million square kilometres, which is about 1 million square kilometres larger than Russia. The CANZUK countries have a combined GDP of $6.4 trillion, or about £4.9 trillion. All four countries have relatively similar levels of GDP per capita, ranging from $42,692 in New Zealand to $61,359 in Australia. But how would the agreement function? Well, the UK is currently, at least at the time of writing, still subject to Article 45 of the Treaty of the Functioning of the European Union, or TFEU, which concerns the freedom of movement of workers among EU states. The CANZUK nations would seek to implement an agreement similar to this. However, given the agreement relies on Britain leaving the EU, some might argue that this is not the most suitable framework to rely on. Alternatively, the agreement could fall under the scope of the Trans-Tasman Travel Agreement between Australia and New Zealand, which allows for free movement of its citizens between each country. Citizens of Australia and New Zealand are able to move, live, work, and indefinitely reside in either country, provided they meet the mandatory health, character, and security criteria. These restrictions are generally reserved only to those who have been criminally charged or deemed a significant health concern to public safety. Within the EU, citizens are free to travel with very few limitations. Brexiteers have pointed to the lack of migration control and some failures surrounding intelligence sharing between member nations as a reason why it's hard to coordinate against cross-border crime and terrorist activities. If a Trans-Tasman agreement was extended to Canada and the United Kingdom, these issues would not be as apparent, as it would place limitations on criminals seeking to move between countries. And there already exists an intelligence sharing agreement under the Five Eyes Alliance. Since the Brexit vote, more and more people have begun to support the CANZUK model, seeing it as the future of British trade. These supporters developed a loose transnational advocacy network using social media in an attempt to support the proposal and gain awareness. In the UK, Andrew Lillico, who served as an advisor to the Leave campaign, Tory MEP Daniel Hannan, and historian Andrew Roberts have expressed their support for the proposal. Roberts has argued that CANZUK could sit alongside the US and the EU, forming a third pillar of the West. A Change.org petition started by a CANZUK advocacy group, CANZUK International, titled Advocate and Introduce Legislation Promoting the Free Movement of Citizens Between the UK, Canada, Australia and New Zealand, has demonstrated that there is some public support for the deal, with the petition garnering over 270,000 signatures. As a percentage of these countries' populations, this isn't a massive number, but it could be a popular opinion. Public polling, conducted by the same advocacy group, has found strong support for CANZUK, though, of course, it's natural to take this with a pinch of salt, as it was done by an advocacy group. 68% of those polled in the UK, 73% of those in Australia, 76% of Canadians, and 82% of people from New Zealand supported the agreement. Interestingly, even in Quebec, the French-speaking province of Canada, they still found majority support, with 63% of people in favour of CANZUK. Despite this, there is still some major scepticism around the deal. Some believe that the idea of the CANZUK Union is an attempt to recreate the British imperial world, or that the agreement is based on racial rather than economic or political terms, as it excludes other Commonwealth nations which do not have a white majority. Geographically, the CANZUK nations, with the exception of Australia and New Zealand, are very distant from each other. This means that trade is limited between CANZUK nations. The UK, for example, only exports 3% of its total goods to CANZUK nations, while sending 44% of its exports to the EU27 and 15% to the USA. As a member of the EU, it's only natural that the UK would export to its fellow member states. But geography also makes a real impact. International studies have shown that the vast majority of nations do most of their trade with their neighbours, simply because it's the most convenient and logical way to do trade. Conventional wisdom that CANZUK really flies in the face of. Likewise, Canada only exports a similarly limited amount of goods to the other CANZUK nations, around 3%, with the USA making up its lion's share of exports at 77%. Australia exports slightly more, 5% to CANZUK nations, which is remarkably low, but a lot of this is with neighbouring New Zealand, who send about 22% of their exports to CANZUK countries, but again, most of this is to its neighbour, Australia. Perhaps all of this will change after the UK leaves the EU, but at this stage, it's not clear whether CANZUK nations will become any more economically important than they already are. There's also no real clarity as to how far the deal will go. Some advocates suggest going as far as proposing a political union, but maybe this wouldn't be as popular as a mutual working visa agreement or establishing closer trade ties. Hopefully now you feel like you know a little more about CANZUK and the potential deal that could be struck. So we want to know what you think about the proposal. Would you support the free movement of workers between the four countries? Do you support an even closer economic or political union, similar to the EU? We put some questions up on our Instagram story to try and gauge what our audience thinks about the proposal. If you head over to our Instagram account, it's TLDR News UK, you can have your say. We'll make sure to share the results over the coming days across all of our social accounts, so make sure you're following us there to find out what our other viewers think. You can find us by searching for TLDR News. And while we're getting you to do stuff, subscribing means that you can see all of our content and never miss a thing. As I mentioned at the top, a big thank you to our Patreon supporters. We recently let them vote on what video topics they wanted to see next, and a video on the UK's constitution came out top. And that's why the next video that you see from us will be a video on the UK's constitution. And also because some of the other topics scored highly, we might make videos on some of those too. As I said, if you want your say in matters like this, then head over to patreon.com/TLDR News, where you can have your say and support the channel.